All right, you are live. We are live. We are live. Are you alive? Are you live, Kristen Brown?
I'm alive.
I just wakened from deep sleep slumber and have been forever caught on video, sleeping online. So, if you want to have a scintillating video, Kristen's got one. She can hold over me for the rest of my life.
I
Welcome
won't
to
share it with
modern
anybody.
Welcome to Modern Day Alchemists. This is episode 11. It's only I think, our third episode on this particular platform, but we have been together several times before, both online and offline through a text thread that we share. For me, that we get to do this 2 weeks in a row now. Thank you, Kristen, and joining me today online to talk about what it means to unplug to recharge, one of those great paradoxes of life. That, though, if you wouldn't mind just saying hello to the audience and let people know where you are and what you're up to and how they might be able to connect with you off this platform. Kristen.
I was thinking about that. I was like, how can I say this shorter and cleaner to people? So, my name is Kristen Brown. I'm an author, coach, and mentor. And I help people recognize limiting beliefs and blocks that are keeping them stuck from manifesting their best life. Pretty succinct. I've been working on
Right
it.
on, absolutely. And that's good. Good pitch. If we were in the elevator, you got me right there. Kristen won't say it, or generally just forgets because but it's cool, awesome. It's awesome for me to say that book. She became a #1 international bestseller on. Have you checked stats lately, Kristen? Is your book still selling well?
Yep, it is. I don't, what's interesting is that Daryl, our friend Daryl, mutual friend, has asked me that. And I'm like, I don't look. He goes, you really don't follow. I go, no, I just let God do what God's going to do. So no, I don't really look at stats and stuff, but yeah.
I love
Joseph,
it.
you keep cutting out a little bit.
Well, that's by
Yeah.
what you say. Oh, is my connection bad?
You cutting out a little bit. Yeah.
All right, let's see if I can correct that here. While I'm working on my connection, introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are, where you are, what you're up to.
Who I am, where I am, and what I'm up to. Okay. That's not a tall order. My name is D Grant. All my friends call me D, so welcome. What was the second question? Where I am? I'm in Texas.
Where are you?
What is going on here today?
And what are you up to, D. Grant? What are you
I'm in
working on?
Texas, and what I'm up to actually today is I've been doing what our show theme is. I've totally unplugged from just about everything. I had a coaching session this afternoon. That's really the only interaction that I've had with another human being. But I've spent most of today with myself and with my heart and with my higher self and connecting to the energy of abundance and love. And it's been absolutely wonderful. In terms of what do I do, um, I help people become the best version of themselves by treating your heart and your mind like a garden, because that's what it is. And everything that we're doing is planting and cultivating and sowing inside, so we produce our best life. That's what I do in a nutshell, or as a seed, I guess. I call the whole process growth farming, and I write a bunch of awesome stories that I share that showcase how this all works. And I lead a community of awesome people that are growing into the best versions of themselves. And so that's me. That's me in a description.
I'm awesome. You're awesome. Let's be awesome, friend.
Yep, I'm awesome. You're awesome. Let's be awesome
I
together.
love that.
Oh.
Let's be awesome together. That's one of the joys of this platform, together, and get to share it then with anybody and everybody who either tunes in live or who can tune in after we post this. So in the comments, which are live, for anybody who wants to join in the chat, you can join in the chat, and we may or may not be able to comment on whatever you post, but we're certainly happy to have people tuned in today. And D. Grant and Kristen, if you'll both put in the URL to your website so people could find that as part of the record in the links as well. So as I have stated in past conversations, I'm really fascinated with paradoxes in our world. I think paradoxes not only are they interesting, but they're also, to me, like science. God is in there somewhere. When two things that are seen and both are true, then I find that fascinating. And we hear that in science lately as the quantum studies come out. They talk about how very core, the teeny tiny particles that make up who we are, both act as waves and as particles, which science said wasn't even possible. And one of the things that I really love about that is there's this observer effect that a particle acts differently when it's being observed than when it's not, which of course raises the question, well, how do they know that? Because if they're observing it, then it's right. So that's since all of these little particles that make up who we are, right? The building blocks of life, they act one way when they're being observed and a different way when they're not being observed. I couldn't help but extrapolate that out to how that plays itself out in human nature. Oftentimes we behave one way and we behave another way when we think nobody's looking. So I think that's interesting how that plays out in our psychology and in our lives. But what I want to talk about today, and I'd love for people how this plays out in your own life, is there's this seeming paradox that the way we recharge is by unplugging. Now, physically, that seems kind of funky because the way you recharge a battery is you plug it into the wall. The way you recharge your phone. So being plugged in seems the way to be recharged. But there's something about the way we are designed as humans when being plugged in for too much, I believe, becomes deluge or a digital distraction where it's pretty impossible not to be depleted, even though we're fully plugged in, to the matrix, etc. But being unplugged from all of that digital distraction, delusion, all of the worries and life, that's where you guys have said as well, and we'll say in your own words, that's where I find that ability to recharge and replenish my spirit, my mind, and my body by being unplugged. So I just love that, unplugging to recharge. And so I'm going to throw it over to you guys and just whatever comes to mind, let's just let this be a free-flowing conversation.
Dee, you want to go?
Ladies first, my friend.
You guys always do this to me. Okay, I got a lot to say about this topic. The paradox on this healing journey, like we talk about, there's one right after the other. There's always these crazy paradoxes. And this is one of them, the unplugging to recharge. Many times in mainstream world, people are like, oh, get off your cell phone, get off TV, get off of that. And we can do those physical things. But yet, are we unplugging from our own limited thinking? Are we unplugging from our own ego? Are we unplugging from our own fears? Because it's one thing to be able to remove ourselves from the cell phones and the this and the work and the that and just try to chill and relax. But yet we could be sitting on a beach and beating ourselves up and having the worst time of our lives, even just sitting on a beach. So for me, what the journey has been is really knowing the difference between when my lower self, fear self, ego self is speaking, or when my higher self, God self, faith self is speaking. So for me, the unplugging is not just the meditation, because I could talk about meditation for hours. I've had the most amazing mystical experiences with meditation. It's absolutely changed my life. But one of the things that is really I have benefited from is unplugging from my own limited thinking, my fear-based thinking. So for me, unplugging it's all day long. It's about right before I'm about to record a video. It's before I go to bed. It is walking and feeling myself rushing through life, that I have to hurry up through lunch or eat at my desk or do something like that. I have to unplug from whatever fear, because there's a fear driving that rushing. If we get really, really honest with ourselves and we chase the belief down the rabbit hole, it's always going to land on some type of fear. So if we can unplug, so for me, it's unplugging from that fear on a daily basis, whatever it might be. Now, I consider myself a courageous person. People have told me that. They're like, you're so courageous. Like, why haven't someone even said to me once, you're not afraid of anything, are you? And I'm like, yes. There's a lot of things that crop up that make me afraid. Yet I've got myself this really good pattern of how to approach those things that are cropping up during the day, asking myself if they're true, asking myself what is the worst possible thing that can happen. And I will take it as far as, is someone going to die or lose a limb or something like that if this thing? And if I'm like, if the answer is no, then I know that is some construction of my ego trying to keep me small and stuck. So I know I'm hitting it hard with this ego stuff right from the go. That is, to me, where the unplugging really happens for me. Take it away.
I love where you've taken this, Kristen, because I initially was thinking on the very surface of just unplugging from the digital distractions that we live in, and you take it a whole nother level there, talking about the voices, not from the screen, inside the screen of my head, the voices of doubt, the voices of fear, self-loathing, or lack of self-respect, the voices of what will people think, or will I be judged, all those type of things. And you've taken that to that whole nother level of being unplugged from that inner critic inside of me, right? To get out of that headspace and to hear something deeper, more true. So I love where you've gone with that, and it's a beautiful practice and a good reminder. Before we go too much deeper, though, let's throw it over to D. Grant. D. Grant, what do you think of when you hear that idea of unplugging to recharge?
I'm going to reiterate something that Kristen's heard me say before, and she actually quoted me a second ago. You're awesome. I'm awesome. Let's be awesome together. That what she just shared is exactly my sentiments on it. So I'm not exactly sure if, even adding anything to that is necessary. I would just frame it from my perspective that it's unplugging from all of the outside stuff and plugging back into myself, but not plugging into the part of me that tries to control or tries to figure everything out. But because anything that's trying to do something inside of me doesn't freaking know. And that's the ego, that's the limited self. The higher self, the God self, doesn't have questions. It's just chill and cool and waiting for me to come on board and tune in. And so that's been a big part of my week this week, actually, is I'm being led to come back into my heart. I spent so much time, and I think this is a big part of our culture and our society. And it's important for us to look at what our programming is in our minds and see where our limiting beliefs are. But our limiting beliefs are not just thoughts that we have. It's stuff that's cycling through our nervous system. It's stuff that's permeating through all of our cells. Like it's negative data. And so if we spend all of our time in our heads trying to make it all work up there, that's not the only place where this stuff is. So much of this is rebalancing our nervous systems. It's bringing Kristen was talking about meditation. One of the things about meditation is you're breathing in life and you are cycling that life and you are channeling light from the sun, from heaven, from God. You're channeling energy from Mother Earth. It's coming into you. It's coming into every cell in your being. And all of this is a cleansing process. And for me, recharging is about cleansing off all the old crap that has been like gunking up my connection with my divine self. And I'm learning and growing and practicing. And I think that's a big part of this. Just like, we talk about being musicians all the time, Joe. Like, you get good at what you do, but the practice is what makes it, the improvement happen. Not, doing it a couple times and going, well, I'm not seeing any results. This is something else I'm getting into. Let go of trying to see results. Because especially in the manifestation community, and I've done this a zillion times, and this is something I'm really shifting out of. It's not about getting a tangible result. It's about creating the change within and me being the best version of myself. And that's all the manifestation that I need. And when I remind myself of that, that gets me out of my head and back into my being. I'm learning that my heart garden deserves just as much focus as my mind garden does, if not more, because actually the heart is 5,000 times as powerful as the mind is. And so it's kind of like if I spend all of my time trying to be Clark Kent, but forget that I'm Superman, what the hell?
Love that. I'm going to jump in.
Really good.
I love that you said come back to our hearts, because we're talking about heart brain coherence. If people don't know what that is, it is getting clarity in our, or getting clearing things out of our brain and then filling our heart with love. And that's when we have this heart brain coherence, which actually is the best state for manifestations to occur, because we're in a state of clearingness and openness. And I've been following Dr. Joe Dispenza for a very, very long time. And one of the things that he will say repeatedly, despite the fact that he has scientists coming in and measuring energy in rooms, despite the fact that he's putting brain things on people while they're in meditations, despite the fact that he's seeing these radical quantum healings in people in 7 days, despite all these things, the one thing that he will return to over and over and over again is about filling the heart with love. When the heart is in a state of love and gratitude, that is like the bottom line. When you do the trickle effect of all this stuff, that's the bottom line. And so one of the things that I try to do now is, I do meditation before, I do this before, I do the other thing before. But one of the things I've kind of like cut my learning curve, or cut my meditation curve, even by just going straight to love and gratitude in my heart. So before I go to bed at night, and many times throughout the day, it's become my new practice, is not just at night, but many times throughout my day, pausing, stopping, and saying, am I feeling love at this moment? Am I feeling gratitude at this moment? And am I in a place of receiving? Because when we're in that place of love and gratitude, we are actually in the highest energetic frequency we can possibly be in, where there is no want. There's no want when we're in presence and high gratitude and love. And it's in that place of no, I should say no need. No need's a better answer. So in the place of no need is when we actually align ourselves to the receiving of those things coming. So that's the one thing. And the other thing I want to add to that, I wrote down self-discipline. Because a lot of times it's not that we don't pray, it's not that we don't meditate, it's not that we don't or we know these things, but we don't keep it up as a practice. So last night I have people in town randomly, they're like, can we come by, we're on a road trip? I'm like, yes. They came by, my kids end up coming over. All this hoopla is happening in the house. I had an early morning this morning, and at 10 o'clock I said good night to the entire party. I wasn't even tired, but I knew I have to have my self-discipline to get myself into bed so that I can do the things that I know that actually work for me. So part of this journey is really about taking care of ourselves the way we would a small child or someone that we love that needs our care, and saying, I know that Kristen needs to go to bed by this time so that when she wakes up at this time, she's fresh. So I'm going to really tend to myself. And I also know that I need to clean and clear my day, and to remove, now have a practice where I say, God, help me remove all people and things from my heart that are not serving. And I wake up every morning fresh. So I think a part of this is understanding really what this is all about, and then having the self-discipline to put these things into practice on the daily, like making it like it's your job.
Yeah. So I love what you said, both of you. And discipline gets a negative rap. I think oftentimes there's a negative connotation associated with this, like a punishment of sorts, like I have to do something, when even Jesus called his followers just someone who's learning, right? I think if we took the word discipline and turned it into a student, a learner, a grower, or a novice in mastery, then we realize discipline isn't something that's imposed upon us. It's an invitation, right? It's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And I heard John Maxwell just recently talking about, of all these thrown around for success and progress. One thing that gets overlooked a lot is a word that Kristen just used, consistency. Consistency really is an act of love when you draw boundaries. You put a schedule and you say, I'm going to do this. I have to, but because I know this is what is best, not only for me and for my well-being, but because it is the best thing for me and for my well-being, then I can show up better equipped and more ready to tackle anybody else who's going to come across my path. So it really actually, it serves me. And this is a really important part. And Kristen talks about this a lot about understanding the difference between self-love and selfish. People might say, well, if you're going to say no to me because you need to take care of yourself, that's selfish. Well, quite honestly, if I don't, as you've all said in different ways, if I don't take care of myself, I have no capacity to take care of you. So this discipline around discipline, I think it's really important to understand, to flip that script and reframe it as, this is the way all masters go from novice to master, is the consistent practice, and not just practice of doing something, learning along the way, refining that process. Like, okay, that really helps. Keep doing that. That's harmful in my progress. Stop doing that. And then asking people and masters and others, what else can I do? So I want to throw in here this easy but important for personal growth and development. That is, stop and start. What should I keep doing? Because that's really helpful. It's really serving me and those around me. What should I stop doing? Because that's counterproductive. And I only found that out through experience. I didn't fail. I learned something. And then what should I start doing? What should I do that I'm not doing yet? And if I can keep the discipline, right, the practice, the consistency of asking every day, what should I keep doing? What should I stop doing? What should I start doing? Simple questions bring that mindset and awareness of what's being a distractive, depletion, depressive thing in my life, and what's refueling my soul so that I can show up as the best that I can be in this moment. Does that resonate with you guys?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, 100%. And that's, I would come home from work, and I was a single mom for much of my parenting career. And once the kids were at an age that I could safely do so, you can bet your bottom dollar that the second I could, I would say, okay, you guys, mommy needs 20 minutes. And then I would say, just stay downstairs. Let me just go have 20 minutes. I'd literally set a timer in my phone because I wanted to be consistent with them. I wanted them to know that 20 minutes meant 20 minutes. And I would lay down in my bed. At first, they would come in and I'd be like, guys, out 20 minutes. And then eventually they were like, oh, you're already done? That was 20 minutes? And it was, so fast for them. But man, giving myself that 20 minutes, not beating myself up thinking, I'm a mother, I have to be with them 24/7, I have to jump at their every whim, or whatever stories I was telling myself. I knew that I woke up, or I came up, because I'm not sure I actually fell asleep, so refreshed, so like, okay, ready to go. And they got so much better of a mommy because I took those 20 minutes. Had I not taken those 20 minutes, I've been tired and probably a little grouchy and whatever it might have been. And I knew that, man, those 20 minutes make the biggest difference to my kids. So yeah, taking the time, it's that whole put your oxygen mask on first. And which is like what I did last night with going to bed early. I was like, this is what I need to do. This morning I got up, it was 74 degrees here in Phoenix. I'm like, I'm going for a walk by myself. I have a house full of people. I didn't wait till people get up, feel like I had to, do all these things because this was in my timing and I knew I'd spend the rest of the day with them. But these are the things I knew I needed to do for me rather than the old people-pleasing things of, I better wait and get everybody up and make sure this and do all these things. And as it was taking care of myself, I filled myself so much and they didn't even know I was gone. So I could have read into this old narrative that I was telling myself about who I'm supposed to be. And they got a really refreshed, happy, grounded Kristen today.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So good. That's a great example. And you talk about the old narrative, which that leads directly to D. Grant, because he talks a lot about how we have to rewrite that story, the narrative that's going inside of our head. So D, take it from there. What are you thinking right now?
Well, you guys are such inspirational people to me. I always end up writing a bunch of awesome notes and just absorbing your wisdom and your your light and everything. It's such a beautiful gift. I feel so honored to get to just be here with you. One little thing I want to kind of dovetail into what both of you said about, here's something for me to ask myself every day. For me, I've spent a lot of time like forward thinking in terms of trying to plan out stuff, like, making these little ideas of, okay, well, first thing in the morning, I need to do this. But first thing in the morning, I also need to do this. And first thing in the morning, I also need to do this. And so then it's like, well, there is no first thing in the morning now. Now there's this laundry list of stuff that I feel like spiritually obligated to do, or I'm going to be missing my calling for the day, or I'm going to be off or whatever. And this is something that somebody very special to me has been talking to me about for a very long time. There is no tomorrow and there is no next hour. There's the eternal right now. So if I can, kind of like what Kristen was saying, if to ask God or ask self if I'm feeling love and gratitude and in a place of receiving in this moment. And so I think that some of these things that we want to kind of create some sort of system or program for that, 3 times a day, I need to be doing this, or X number of times, first thing in the morning, I need to do this. First thing when I wake up in the morning, I need to do this. Before I go to bed, I need to do this. Sure, do that stuff. I hope that works out for you. What if you also allowed yourself to ask yourself these questions at any given moment and then receive whatever it is that comes? Because kind of like I had a great coaching session with good friend and client of mine today. And one of the big things that kind of kept coming up in our conversation was how our perception of what's happening isn't always what's happening. It is our perception of what's happening.
Yep.
And so if in any given moment, if I can pause and say, okay, what is actually going on here? Because the filter or the lens, I always do this with my glasses when I talk about lenses, because we're all looking at life through our lenses. There's a filter that we're processing everything through. And some of it's our subconscious programming. Some of it is our unconscious patterns and beliefs. Some of it's the stories that we've told ourselves from the beginning. This goes into the narrative question that Joe asked a second ago. But while recognizing that there is a narrative that's going on inside of us, that some of it's serving us and some of it isn't, and part of the work that we do, the inner work that we do, is consciously rewrite that story. Sometimes the story gets rewritten on its own. That's something I'm discovering, because a lot of this rewriting the story thing can become a very arduous and somewhat not stressful, but can seem like this difficult process. We're constantly like, well, that's a negative story. I got to work on this negative story. Oh, that's a negative story. I got to work on this negative. Why do I have all these negative stories in me? Why can't they all go away? It's okay. Recognizing awareness is 90% of the work. I had this idea a couple weeks ago that I've been meaning to, everybody that's watching this that is watched any of my videos before or whatever, I've been meaning to add this little thing at the end of my videos that plays on what the G.I. Joe cartoon from the 80s used to do. At the end of all of the cartoons, they would say, well, now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Well, I want to say now you're aware, and awareness is 90% of the battle.
Yeah.
And so sometimes just being aware helps the story to get rewritten on its own, instead of trying to like manually go into your mindset and take, your magic eraser on every single little story. For me, that's why Ho'oponopono has been so powerful, because in just a few seconds, I can recognize that there's a story that I don't like. And without getting into the details and having to know all this stuff, I can just say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I recognize this doesn't serve me. Thank you. I love you. And it's interesting and powerful and beautiful to me. I think it's beautiful to everybody, but like, I don't have to do any work. If saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you is work, then give me that job 24/7. I'll work for free. Because the clarity and the freedom and the peace and the love and the joy and the restoration and the healing that takes place is so magical and so wonderful. And that, for me, the narration gets rewritten on its own.
Yeah.
I read a book talked about spiritual disciplines, and it talked about the process. Often at first it begins as drudgery. I have to do this. Even though I know it's good for me, I don't want to. But then with the consistency of sticking with it, then it kind of gets, okay, I've got this routine that I'm doing. But then if you stick with it long enough, then it transforms to delight. So it goes from drudgery to discipline to delight. And I love that invitation, what you're talking about on so many levels. Discipline, which gets a bad rap, starts like a push, like it feels like forced, like I have to do this. But the way momentum works, as we all know, is that eventually momentum goes from inertia is against you and you're moving. But once it is moving, then it's on your side, and it goes from push to pull. I like the idea of like this runaway cart on the railroad track, and you just jump in and go for the ride, which that's what we call flow state. I'd love for either or both of you to talk about how have you implemented the discipline, quote unquote disciplines, of unplugging from not only the external noise, but the noise inside of your brain, and then implemented that and carried time. So it went from a push where it was work, but then it gets that momentum on its side and becomes a pull where you get to jump in and enjoy the ride. So whoever wants to jump in there.
Okay, I will. So many times a human won't seek for change unless there is a necessity for it, because we love to be comfortable and we love to be in the familiar. We love to be in the known. So oftentimes it takes a 2x4 to the head till we'll start to explore other options. So this was, but this is not the way it needs to be, by the way. I'm just going to tell everybody straight up. This is not the way it needs to be, but tends to be how we learn, because we're so wired to remain comfortable. We like predictability. We like what's familiar. We like to know what to expect. And even in some of the worst situations, like let's say abusive situations, some people might even stay that because they know what's to be expected. Where to move into something else that is just unknown, even you can say, I can give you the most beautiful relationship of your life. They wouldn't know what to do with that because there's an unknown aspect of this unpredictability aspect of it. So backing up, it takes many times for us to hit rock bottom in some capacity. I'm not necessarily talking about drugs or alcohol, although that's a rock bottom for many. That could be their pathway in. But many times it takes us to hit a rock bottom, which is where the pain of staying the same far outweighs the fear of the unknown or the fear of change. So then we start to say, how?
Yeah.
What can I do? We open our hearts, we open our minds for something to come in. So this was the case with me. And when I really started a hardcore meditation practice, but I did it, why? Because I needed to calm my nervous system. Not because I knew there's all these benefits and all these things. It was taking the ibuprofen for the headache. Okay, well, I know meditation is going to calm my nervous system. So I started doing meditation to calm my nervous system. Guess what? Not only did it work, but this whole other world opened up for me. This connection that I never thought was there. Peace enveloped my life that was never there. Lack of control, letting go, not trying to be the boss of everybody and everything. And this flow came into my life that was unbelievable. So we don't have to go there because we're broken. We're tired. We're exhausted. We're on our knees. We're bloody. We got our head in the sand and someone's, boot print, someone's pushing our boot in the sand. That's how I used to explain that I felt like I had my head in the sand and someone had their boot. That's how low I was. We don't have to get to that space. We can merely notice, I don't like the way I feel. I don't like that I'm walking around the majority of the time with lower dense emotions rather than the higher, lighter emotions. And I never refer to emotions ever as positive or negative, because you read most the literature out today, people are going to refer to negative emotion. Well, you're feeling a negative emotion. There is no negative emotion that implies the emotion is wrong. The emotions are never wrong. The emotions are there as guideposts to show us what's working in our life and what is not working in our life. So if we're conscious of our emotion and we say, I don't feel good right now. I'm angry, bitter, resentful, depressed, hopeless, have no confidence, whatever the yucky or feeling emotion is, just knowing that, that's an indicator that we're coming from our lower self. We're coming some sort of belief or thought system that is going to keep us in the lower vibrational spaces. So by recognizing that, not waiting until you got the boot on your face, but saying, I don't really like the way I feel right now. Okay. Now I'm going to take this just one step further. Some people are so comfortable in resentment and bitterness and this and that they want to stay in it. That's their choice. We have free will and we get to be in whatever place we want to be in. But for me, I love joy. I love love. I love happiness. I love laughter, joking, all the things. So my body is not comfortable in those spaces because I've trained myself, because I was addicted to drama back in the day. And the way Dr. Joe would explain that, when I say addicted to drama, is we get addicted to the chemicals in our brain. This is what feels normal. It feels normal to be afraid. It feels normal to be gossiping. It feels normal to be judgmental. So when we start to shift out of that, guess what, everybody? It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel new. It's going to feel weird. And it's not going to feel like it's the right thing. I just had someone the other day ask me, they said, why is it when I do the right thing, it feels so wrong? And this is the answer, because you've not yet trained your brain. You've not yet changed your brain to think in terms of better feeling beliefs. So that's my thought about that.
Really good. Yeah, I love that emotions aren't right or wrong. We make judgments, right? And so I think this applies to what's going on inside of us, but also it ties directly to what happens on our screen, that in the times that we're scrolling through the endless cycle media posts, we're actually being conditioned to make snap judgments. Is it good or bad? Do I like it? I don't like it. Should I comment? Should I stop? All those type of things. In fact, Howard loves to remind me all the time that the world's highest paid engineers are paid exorbitant amount of money to keep our attention on the screen. And so we're conditioned for ridiculous amounts of time, right, to make these snap judgments based on very little information. Well, it's inevitable, of course, then that will transfer evaluating my own thoughts, my own emotions, my own actions, making these snap judgments, again, based on such little information, much of it which may be a false signal, as Kristen's talking about. And so sometimes heard, I think it was Vishen Lakhiani who founded the Mind Vet. He talks about, people often talk about how suffering, the board upside the head, is the event that's required for us to make a change. He said, but there's plenty of proof in history another way, and that's actually through mindfulness and meditation, that yes, we can learn, sometimes because we have to, because we're in so much pain that we have to make a change, as the pain of staying the same actually seems like less than the pain of into the unknown. But there is a kinder, gentler way, and actually a healthier way, and that is going internally and making that connection with your divine self, with the God inside of you, with your source, which is uncursed. And we are creatures of comfort. We are patterned, we seek comfort, but comfort is not our friend. That's like the false. It's like the siren in Homer's Odyssey that's saying, "Come over here," and then you crash your boat across the rocks, right? So it takes time and practice and consistency, as we've talked about already, to past that, the call of the comfort, the call of the sirens, which is comfortability, and say, okay, I'm going to go into what's seemingly discomforting now, and then realize over time it goes from that drudgery or discomfort to discipline to delight. All right, I'll throw it over to D. Grant. What's on your mind, brother?
Well, this is brilliant, man. I like that we're so in the three of us have this. We've talked about this several times. We have this text thread that we call each other soul siblings, and that's really what this is, because I'm talking to my sister, my brother every day.
Mighty soul siblings. Thank you.
Forgive me, please. But one of the things that we do on a regular basis is get into these alliteration spells, especially Joe. And so comfort, consistency. I'm going to throw another C word in there, and that's commitment. I believe that that's one of the other things that can kind of get, well, it can get taken out of context. There's another C word. But with everything that we're talking about here, to make consistency happen, there has to be commitment. And I think that also goes into what you were talking about earlier about discipline. And I really appreciate, Joe, how you talked about, the disciples and discipline. And it's this discipline to be in this ongoing learning process, this ongoing growth process, this I'm not going to give up on the process, which is, something that it does take a different kind of person. For people that have had issues with staying consistent or with really dedicating, there's another D word, dedicating themselves to doing what they need to do to continue to move forward and not take one step up and two steps back and then give up on the process or on themselves. The idea of committing to themselves might seem to be a big challenge. And this has been something that I've gone through several times. And I appreciate what Kristen said about how sometimes we have to hit rock bottom several times before it finally makes a connection with us. There's been a couple things in my life that I have not necessarily hit rock bottom on, but I've gone all in towards, and I've hit a wall. And then it knocked me on my butt, and I get back up and I go, okay, take a little while to shake the dust off, and then I go all in and another wall. I've hit tons of walls. I've hit failure more times than I can count. And one of the things that I think is really important for us to recognize, I grew up in a culture and in a dynamic in a lot of ways where failure was not welcome. It was ingrained in me that failure was a semblance of unworthiness. And that when you don't make, I used to struggle and still do in some ways with very deep perfectionism and having to have everything right, having to do everything right, having not just right, but perfect. And any sort of notch against that perfection was a indication of my unworthiness. And then I would, I would project that out onto people and then make a negative assumption that that's the way that I was viewed in response. And all of it I equated as a way of failing at being me, a way of failing at being good enough, a way of failing at being worthy. But that's the idea of failure is none of these things. Really what failure is, hey, that didn't work. Get up and try again.
Yeah.
Hey, that didn't work. Get up and try again. And again, if we spend, and I'm saying I don't mean to project this. For me, I'll just make it personal for me. When I spend so much time trying to get in here and just change the game in my mind, I do make progress forward, but I'm learning that that's so much more of the hard work mentality that so many of us have been indoctrinated in operating in. It's not just the doing the work with our hands and showing up to work, quote unquote, at this time so we can get off at this time, and or working 80 hours a week or whatever. It's not just that that's hard work. It's just it's also trying to do so much with our minds and trying to figure everything out. And one of the biggest things that I'm so glad failure has taught me in the very recent present is that my heart has to, like I've been saying, my heart has to be a part of this process because it actually knows all the keys.
Yep.
It has all the answers. Bringing the heart and the mind together and letting them work on the same team together. And also recognizing that my mind is very valuable, but not for the things that I've made it, given it a task to do. I'm moving away from, this is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable for me to get out of problem solving mode. I spent 40 something years in this place. So yeah, it is challenging. But when I let my mind be a playground, instead of a machine that does a job, things change. Because I'm learning that this is really what leaning into trust is all about. Because when I lean into trust, I'm leaning into something that is beyond my mental and psychological capabilities of understanding and control. I can't control something that is outside of my mental capacities, which is awesome. Thank you, God, that that's the way that it works. But the more that I try to control a
Yes.
process or an outcome and attach myself onto either one of those things, then the more I am getting in my own way and contributing to more of the failure that I don't want to experience. So it takes discipline, and it takes commitment, and it takes consistency to continue. There's 3 C's. Continue into this place that does feel very unknown for the first little bit. And leaning into that trust and getting out of my own way, getting into my heart, not having to know the answers, not having to see the results, not having to have all of the proof in front of me, but to trust that everything that I need is actually within me, and everything that I can't see, it's okay. It's all working out in my favor. And I'm going to be consistent in my commitment to that process.
I say yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, so much there, Dee. Thank you so much. Gosh, there's several things I want to say. I've been writing notes like crazy too. There's one thing I want to go back a little bit from when we were talking about 15 minutes ago. And I want to say this. I remember when I really had my head cracked open and it was time where the rubber hit the road and I was like, no more of that past, no more of that crap. I call that time the College of Kristen. You guys know about that. And as I was going through that journey, there's something that I recognized, and that was, and this is before I ever heard this in the outside world. I realized I'm like, what I've gotten good at is being uncomfortable. So I got comfortable with being uncomfortable because I realized in that uncomfortability is the unknown, and in the unknown is where the magic happens. So I learned that,
Yes.
for my brain, you throw me some logic and I'm like, yeah, baby. Like, I like logic. And that just made sense to me. Like, I'm over here trying to control all this. But when I get out of control and get into uncertainty, uncomfortable, that's when things start to work out. So I allowed that to become my new normal, where I did not know. I don't know. Saying I don't know. Oh, I got an answer. I'll figure out an answer. I'll have an answer. I'll do it, and just sitting there in the really, to me, it was a God space. I don't know, but the universe does. I don't know because I only think the same 60,000 thoughts a day. I'm recycling the same thoughts. However, now that I know that I don't know, I am now opening to receiving some sort of magnificent information that I have not been privy to. And I allow universe to bring it to me, whether it comes from Mojo or D Grant or somebody else or God itself into my head or a book I'm reading, then it comes to me. So that's the one thing I want to say is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and letting go is where the magic happens. So that's the one thing. The second thing I want to talk about is what you're talking about, Dee, as Dr. Joe talks about this all the time. In order to elicit change in our life, many times we have to come to know who we are right now. Who is the current personality that we are right now? And is that personality showing up in a way in our life that is, I don't know the right word here, bringing good things to us or manifesting our best life or, cultivating peace, whatever it might be that we're looking for? Are we getting a good result from that current personality? And if we're not, hi, little iodine. But if we are not getting a good result from that current personality, that it's really important. He tells people this, write a list of all of the things that you think or that you're doing. So I'm just going to throw some random things out there. I'm jealous, or I'm insecure, or I have a lot of self-doubt, or whatever it might be. And you get really, really conscious. You take all that unconscious programming back here. I'm pulling my hair. You guys can't see it. Take this, pull it up front, so that you're conscious of the fact that you might be making these up, jealous, insecure, self-doubt, whatever. These are what's happening. then when you know those things, that what's happening, you can say, who do I want to be in place of this? Because I know these aren't working for me. They're causing problems in my relationships, XYZ. Who do I want to be? I want to be someone who's confident, who's not afraid, whatever it might be, the turnarounds. And then when those things come in, we're so conscious of them now. They're not just running the program them in the back here. They're right here in the front. And when they come in, we can say, oh, there you are, jealousy, or there you are, insecurity, or there you are, whatever, self-doubt. And then we can say, this is, I know this doesn't work for me. So I'm going to get into the unknown and I'm going to click over to what will work for me. So taking the time to do that conscious shift from what's unserving to serving, what's unserving to serving, one little piece at a time, we are actually retraining our brain for this new way of thinking to be our default, the new way of thinking, the positive, empowering way of thinking. What stops people is that the chemicals that are generated from the thoughts of jealousy, insecurity, this and that, we're so used to those that when they're not present and we're used to those feelings in our body, we think something's wrong. That's where we have to go, holy crap, I'm not feeling jealousy. I'm not feeling this. There's something right. And that's the moment when we can make the shift, when we can really stay on that pattern. And I will tell you what has kept me on my pattern, this goes back to the meditation stuff I was talking about in the beginning, is I felt better. Which each step that I've took, I was like, wow, or taken, I felt better. And that started this like little locomotion inside of me, when a steam engine starts to go and the wheels are kind of turning slow, it's like, but I'm going forward. And pretty soon I was just like, oh, this feels so much better. Choo-choo. I'm chugging along now because it feels better. And then something happens and I switch tracks, right? That little lever's pulled and then I'm on a different track because something happened. I didn't do my practice. Something got away from me, whatever. And then I say, okay, it's okay. Give myself grace. And I get back on the track again. And once again, the momentum will start to go in that direction.
Yeah, the word that came to mind while you're talking is detox. And who have to go through a detox program, their body's telling them all these reasons why it's miserable, it's painful, it's excruciating to get that pattern out of their body so that they can become healthy. You're talking about that exact same process with our mindset, with the thoughts that are keeping us small, keeping us in pain, that are keeping us caught in these terrible patterns. They do become comfortable because they're familiar, right? But the detox process is allowing to go through the discomfort of getting that cleansed from our system. And I'm of the belief that one of the most damaging phrases in our language is "I know," because as soon as I say "I know," I've already cut myself off to any other possibilities. I've made a judgment statement. I've put my flag in the sand and saying this is possibilities. And so I love what we're talking about, how embracing the process, which is discomforting at first, and actually seeing that must be progress because I'm detoxing from the toxic patterns and creating new neural pathways and new patterns. Now, we don't have a ton of time, but I'd love for those who have been tuning in and they're in agreement, they're tracking with a shift, right, to unplug from the patterns and the distractions into something that's more healthy and more productive. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the methods that you use or strategies or meditations, or what is it that we could offer to people to say, here's something to try that can be very helpful in this process?
Dee, you can go first. I'm trying to point. There you go. Dee, you first.
I'm going to use perfect. I'm going to use Kristen's acronym from last week, the KISS acronym. Keep it simple, or keep it simple, Superman, depending on what your preference is. This is something I'm shifting into. I've spent a lot of time doing affirmations, I am, I am, I am. And that's been an incredibly powerful way for me to change my self-concept, totally revolutionize my life. It got me out of the rock bottom that I was in about 6 years ago into a much more healthy and beautiful, more solid place. What I'm shifting into now, though, is I'm still using affirmations, but I'm kind of changing the way that I do it. Instead of adding all of the I am stuff at the beginning, because there's a part of my mind that wants to resist that stuff. It's helping me to get into my heart. And that is just using individual words. So here's what I've been meditating on, getting in, going into my heart. I made a video about this a couple days ago. I spent some time earlier this week just being in my heart and saying the word abundance. And what ended up happening, I felt my heart like just start glowing, and I felt this glow take over my whole body, and I just stayed in that place. It was beautiful. And I felt like I was resonating with abundance. And so that's been my meditative practice now. I will just get still, get quiet, breathe in, put my focus on my heart. And some people will do things where they imagine light coming in and shining in different parts of their body, or the light coming in and breathing straight into your heart. Whatever works for you, as long as you are connecting with your heart and you can feel it. But breathe in and focus on, and I would recommend just doing one or two things. Maybe a small rotation right before you're going to sleep. This is something I learned from Wayne Dyer. Whatever you tell yourself right before you go to sleep, the 5 minutes before you go to sleep, you are conditioning your subconscious mind to focus on that.
Yep.
So I've been just saying, I am well, I am at peace, I am loved, I am whole. But when I do my meditation, I'm just putting my focus on my heart and just saying abundance, success, love, abundance, success, love. And what I think that does is it taps into what Kristen was saying a few minutes ago about the whole I don't know stuff. When I get out of trying to say that I know this, or here's another phrase that I've never really used this, but I hear people say it all the time, and I'm just like, yeah, it's not really serving you very well. When you hear people say, well, I know it for a fact that, that's a story that you haven't written in permanent marker. You've taken a chisel to a rock and you're saying this is the way it is, because try to erase that crap. But we don't know. And just getting into this place of I don't have to know how, and I don't have to know when. And actually, the more that I think about how and when, the more that I'm getting in my own way. So since there is no tomorrow or next year, there's just the present now. Right now, in this place, I am one with abundance, success, love, peace, God, and being in that place and all of the details. I'm a very detailed person. So letting go of details and letting go of attachment to having to know how or when or trying to figure it out, or even like getting into some sort of like, I have to be able to visualize how this is going to look or what it's going to be like. Mm-hmm. Let that go too. If the mind can be empty, then it can be free. And I think so much of what we're talking about today is freedom. So there you go.
I love that, D. I'm going to piggyback on that. So I could give 10,000 things that we could do, because I've got tools up the yin and I practice new things up the yang, and the list goes on and on and on. But I wrote down something. First of all, when Dee said keep it simple, okay? Keep it simple, sweetheart, or Superman, or anything you want. Fill in that blank. When he said that, I was like, that's exactly right. Because there's a lot of teachers in the world. And as one myself, what I tend to do is want to give the power back to the person. I'm not here to be your guru. I'm not here to tell you what's going to work for you. What I want to see people do is ask themselves what they need. What is going to work for you? What do you need? The very first question I asked in the midst of my tsunami was, oh my God, I need to calm my nervous system. I'm a wreck. I can't eat, blah, blah. So I started to search for ways to calm my nervous system. did not have to do with alcohol or drugs or anything synthetic. It had to do with, how can I do this? Okay, that's when the meditation piece came in. But what I wrote down when you asked that question, Joseph, was for each, I would recommend to any person to say, ask yourself all day long, every day, what do I need? We need to tend to ourselves the same way if anybody's a parent and you have a baby and it's crying. We don't know why. Okay. After time, we realize this is a dirty diaper cry. This is a food cry. This is a bellyache cry. This is a scared cry. We get to know those things, but how do we get to know those things? By trying things over and over and over again. We keep trying things to help soothe the baby. Same thing we need to do with ourselves, because we're reparenting. That's part of this journey. It's one of the titles people use is reparenting. I call it the spiritual journey. But really what we're doing is we're going back and we're giving ourselves that unconditional love that we feel like we fractured away from. So asking ourselves, what do I need? What do I need? I ask myself that all the time. What do I need? Okay. That question, if you are honest with yourself, is going to reveal the answer, because there's only one person that really knows what you need, and that's you. That's you. People are going to try to tell you what you need, or they're going to say it based on what they did, but it's an individual journey. So ask yourself, what do I need? Then be willing to give it to yourself. It's really super simple. And you do that repeatedly. What do I need? What do I need? And I'm not talking about things like, that are going to be harmful for you. What do I need? I'm talking about things that are going to be soothing to your heart and your soul. When you start to do those things, you become your own guru, you become your own best friend, you become your own best teacher and guardian, and you start to guide yourself on the journey. That's why it's called a self-healing journey. Yes, sometimes we need teachers and things to facilitate that for us, but this is the shortcut. This is the quick version. What do I need?
And I think it's really important to point and comes full circle that what do I need is quite a different question than what do I want. Our wants will scream out at us all the time just from what we need. And so it really does take a mind practice to not only ask the question, what do I need, but not to be fooled by the immediate answers, which are, what do I want? Because oftentimes what we want, what we crave, quote unquote crave, isn't what we need, right? I mean, we see this, mindless TV and all these type of things, that what feels good in the moment, the comfort food, is what we crave, but it's not necessarily what's healthy for us. So I love the fact that you're asking that very simple but important question for the answer, because I'm a big proponent of questions. I think questions suspend judgments from that I know or I know better place. But questions are only helpful if you actually take the time to listen for the answers, right? And then, because I'm guilty as anybody as asking the question, listening for the answer, getting an answer, and then saying, okay, now I know. But that put myself right back where I started and implemented. And I love the quote by Robin Sharma, who says, without implementation is delusion. And I can fool myself and be deluded all the time, where I actually ask the question, I get the answer, but I don't ever put it in practice. So I think I would apply that even to this conversation here for anybody who's tuned in. For me, gathering of information is a great place to start, but it's a terrible place to stop, because information alone, right? Information without implementation is delusion. And so I want to give a simple tool as well for anybody who tunes in. I got this from Brendan Burchard. One of his mantras, very simple, one-word mantra throughout the day, is release. He sets an alarm every hour or so on average, depending on what his schedule is, where he gets up from the computer, he gets out of the focus and all swirl things that are required of him, and he does 5 minutes of just a breathing practice where he uses the word release. And you two have heard me say, I did it where I say breathe in for 6 seconds and say receive, because being in is a reception. So receive. That's what I'm thinking and what's what I'm saying even. And then on the exhale, take it nice and slow and say release all the distractions and all the things that I need to detox from. And I think that's a simple but great practice that can tie us into just the natural inhale and exhale of our lungs, but to do it with a purpose and simplify all of those distractions into what it is that we're looking for. And when will come with practice, then either writing it down, telling a friend, and saying, okay, what do I do with this? Because again, information without implementation is delusion. So we've pretty much filled up our hour and this on a more regular basis now, so we can get into methods more often. But I think what's really valuable about the discussion that we've had is that, like Jim Limitless, if your mindset and your motivation aren't in place, methods aren't sustainable. And we get this backwards all the time. I get this backwards all the time, right? I want to start with the methods. I want to find what does somebody else is doing because it works, and then start doing it, but then I don't stick with it. Why? Because my mindset and my motivation are not. So I want to encourage anybody and everybody, encourage myself to understand that there is a process here. Trust the process. I love the word trust came in here. Not only just trust the process, but I like to say trust the processor, which is that release into the hands of the source. And the other thing I love to say is that it requires, right? The inspiration and enthusiasm, gratitude and grace, those four elements are really simple, and they're free, and they're sustainable if we can intentionally, mindfully, and with awareness. So before we wrap up, just I would like each of you to let the audience know how they can connect with you offline. And then I'll do a final wrap and we'll say goodbye for today.
G? No.
Yeah, the mirror effect. There we go.
God, that doesn't even look like my arm either. Doesn't even look like my arm.
It's an insert arm here. The best way to connect with me is through growthfarming.com. I've got some really cool stories there. I've got a couple free stories that both of these two have read and listened to that will totally change your life. Actually, I've got a brand new book that I published on Sunday that ties into what we talked about today. It's called Reshape Your Self-Concept, Transform into the Most Powerful Version of You. And I actually talk about my perspective and ways of doing a lot of the things that we've talked about, including meditation, affirmations, and really taking the time and focus on being aware of what your old story is, erasing it, and writing a new one. But that story is at growthfarming.com. Click under the stories tab, you'll find it.
Yay, D. Grant.
Right on. Kristen.
Okay, you can...
Woot, woot.
People can find me right there, kristenbrown.org. All my social channels are there, but I spend the majority of my time. You'll find me live. You can find me chatting, commenting to people, doing all that, building my community over at YouTube, which you can just type into the search bar at Kristen Brown. That's my home right now. That's where I love to be. So I do dip into the other socials, but YouTube's really my gig.
All right, and my URL is right below my face right there, mojo.studio. There'll be a link tree there to all of my social accounts, YouTube channels as well. And I would just, Andy Grant, if anybody who tunes in has questions on, well, how does this work, or why does this work, or what do you mean by any of this? The three of us have a desire to help, right? We've received so much, learned so much, and it's our privilege, right? It's our blessing to be able to share this information, to inspire anybody on to making changes that are helpful to their lives. So please don't feel like we're untouchable. Reach out to any of us or all of us, and we would love to have an impact and influence over someone's life so that they too can live the life of their dreams. So I just want to say on behalf of D. Grant Smith and myself, Mojo, the Alchemists, and we will, God willing, do this again next Friday. We'll be live at 2 p.m. Pacific, which is a different time if you're in another part of the world. You can figure it out.
It's 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific is 5 Eastern, right? Mojo, did you tell them where they can find you?
I'm not even going to make it. Yeah, mojo.studio right there, just right below my face. My URL is listed right. So thank you, friends, mighty companions.
Thanks,
soul
everybody, for
siblings,
being
for
here.
spending this hour with us. Bless you all.